Cinemania Field Report, RoboCop. I remember the 80s, the real 80s. They were very different from the 80s of the movies. I remember a time of haves and have-nots, prosperity for yuppies at the cost of poverty for everyone else, as Reaganomics destroyed the American social safety net. I remember this time when pop culture was a monolith. Everyone saw the same movies in the theaters, listened to the same songs on the radio, watched the same shows on TV. We might have spent all day shouting at each other, but when it was time for the Golden Girls to come on TV, America sat down and shut up, like a family. The 80s was a decade legendary for its pop culture marketing phenomena. The biggest hits had space wizards and laser wands, muscle-bound simpletons with magic swords, ghost hunters, robots, aliens, crime-fighting cyborgs. And in the 80s, if you can make a thing, you can sell a thing. All these iconic characters and more got plastered all over t-shirts, lunchboxes, comic books, fast food collector's cups with toxic paints, various lines of action figures, their own Saturday morning cartoons. So yeah, you better believe movies got heavily marketed to children. RoboCop came out in 1987, right as that decade's crass commercialism reached a fever pitch. It was an ultra-violent, drug-filled, bleak social satire directed by Dutch bad boy Paul Verhoeven. See our earlier report on him for more on him, kids. It was a film that pointed out the dangers of mass corporate commercialism. Irony much? It was a film so brutal and gory that it had to be recut and resubmitted to the MPAA no fewer than 8 times, but maybe as many as 12 times before it eventually barely managed to squeak through with an R rating. This movie was not kid-friendly. Not even close. But that didn't stop them from marketing it to kids. Which means, I remember when RoboCop shot that one guy in the dick. But why, you may ask, was a 12-year-old allowed to watch a cyborg shoot a rapist in the dick? Short answer, because it was awesome! Let me break it down for you. RoboCop takes place in a dark cyberpunk crime-ridden version of Detroit. Before we dive more into the movie proper, we get the feel for this near-future world through its media. TV news and ads for such things as artificial hearts and family board games called Nukem. Products that not only kill burglars, but torture them entertainingly in the process. This world is a place of mass corporate control and cynicism. And the biggest, most cynical, and most controlling corporation in this world is Amazon. Omni Consumer Products, or OCP for short. And OCP has plans. OCP wants to build its own glittering private kingdom, a city under corporate rule, a company town, if you will, Delta City. And it's the CEO's pet project, his legacy. The only thing stopping them is the fact that there are people who already live there. Their solution? Buy up the public services and sabotage them. Make the existing city unlivable by accelerating the already rampant crime of old Detroit. Naturally, they bought the Detroit police force, cut its funding and its staff, while arming and funding criminal gangs throughout the city, as you do. This allows OCP to work every angle. Not only do they take a cut of the arms and drug sales from the crooks, but they sell to the cops military-grade weapons and armor, and half-assed, overpriced, automated security systems, all while mustering the political will that will allow OCP, to build the privately held subscriber-based corporate fiefdom of its dreams. We enter the story during a meeting where OCP's VP of Security Concept, Dick Jones, played by everyone's favorite 80s white guy in a suit, Ronnie Cox, is in the C-suite pitching the board on a prototype for OCP's newest crime-fighting robot, the Enforcement Droid Model 209, Ed 209, which looks like the Scout Walker from Star Wars on meth. Unfortunately, this thing has some bugs in its software. And then someone else who just had the wrong mix of ambition and stupidity loaded the thing with live ammo, because whoopsie doodle, Ed 209 accidentally turns a junior executive into hamburger in a display of unflinching, ultra-violence so intense that this scene alone almost got the movie slapped with an X rating. No polite pan away or off-screen death here. We watched this poor slob take about 3 dozen 20mm rounds. A failed demonstration of poorly thought out and dangerous product, or a very successful demonstration of kick-ass, awesome, super dangerous product. You be the judge. Hell, you can be the jury too, but OCP has the role of executioner covered. Hungry young upstart Bob Morton, played wonderfully by Miguel Ferrer, takes the opportunity to pitch his rival cybercop project to the CEO, saying that the only thing they are waiting for is the right volunteer. Much to the chagrin of VP Jones, Bob gets the go-ahead. And that's what we call in showbiz foreshadowing. Enter Alex Murphy, played by Peter Weller. Murphy's just a cop from the suburbs who suddenly finds he's been transferred. Where? Why, to downtown Old Detroit, of course. You know, the neighborhood where 30 officers were killed in the last couple of weeks alone. Murphy wants to go where the action is. Murphy, to be fair, is a little bit of an idiot. So within 10 minutes of walking into the downtown station, which looks like a war zone, Murphy meets the mandatory gruff officer in charge, witnesses multiple acts of violence, helps in cleaning out a deceased officer's locker, which Murphy inherits, and finally meets his partner, a scrappy female officer named Lewis, who has just kicked the shit out of a violent perp upstairs. Mondays! Am I right? Lewis is played by Nancy Allen, who you might remember as the mean girl from the original Carrie. Well, here she's an even meaner girl. Nancy Allen rules. Murphy and Lewis get to know each other enough to establish some pathos. Murphy's an all-American nice guy with a wife and kid who he likes to entertain with speed draws and gun-spinning tricks, blah, blah, blah. Boring! This is an 80s audience. It's time for more violence. Meet Clarence J. Boddicker, speeding away from a heist, yelling at his cronies for burning the money. Good health is so hard to find. His crew of thugs is a motley assortment of 80s bad guy tropes. We got punk rock guy, old guy in a hat, black guy with a beret and an annoying laugh, Asian guy in a headband, and random yuppie fuck. And Boddicker himself is not the type of guy we usually see portrayed as a gang leader in 80s action thrillers. He looks more like someone's dad, which is funny because Boddicker is played by Kurtwood Smith. You know, the dad from That 70s Show. He's balding, he has wire-rimmed glasses, and looks more like he'd be at home in a bookshop than leading this band of rogues. But Smith's performance combined with his banality means Boddicker's presence comes across as more unhinged, more menacing, and more terrifying than any 80s black leather-clad baddie of cinema could ever hope to be.
I never could watch That 70s Show because I kept expecting Red to whip out a MAC-10 from under his lazy boy and ventilate some people every time he got annoyed.
You think that's weird? You should see him on Star Trek. It didn't matter if he was playing the President of the Federation, or Cardassian, or some Delta Quadrant alien who fucks with time. I just kept waiting for him to threaten everyone with a foot up the ass.
Right? Anyhow, Murphy and Lewis get the call. They pursue the van full of Boddicker's goons, and a wild car chase / shootout follows that only ends when Boddicker throws one of his own guys out of the van and into Murphy and Lewis's windshield. But even this insane tactic doesn't put our super cops off the scent. Eventually, Murphy and Lewis track down Boddicker and gang to their hideout in an abandoned foundry. Brave though they may be, they're not stupid. They call for backup. But shuckerdoodles, there's no backup available. Damn staffing shortages. They're told to go in and apprehend the suspects, and then everything goes sideways. So far, this isn't too far from the standard 80s action fare, but it's at this moment when our dystopian cop drama takes a turn and accelerates into pure cinemania. Murphy is captured by Boddicker and his gang, who force Lewis to watch as they proceed to expend the ammo reserves of a small African nation, blowing Murphy to literal pieces in a scene so brutal it haunted me for years afterwards. This savagery of this violence is so intense that to this day it is still hard to watch.
I first saw that scene when I was 9. I still can't watch it, and I'm a grown-ass man who's damn near 50 years old. That's legitimate emotional trauma. Cinemania.
I hear ya. Boddicker finishes Murphy off with a shot to the head and leaves the two of them for dead. With the wounded Lewis calling in the medics, flashbacks of Murphy's life are intercut with the crash team desperately trying to revive him. Eventually, the doctors call it and the screen fades to black. Fun fact, they got a hold of actual paramedics to reel off the procedures and proper actions for trying to save a guy who's just met the wrong end of a shotgun. Murphy is dead. Just another casualty of old Detroit, like 4-part Harmony soul groups and the auto industry. Then, a burst of static. Then, a pixelated POV shot. Two lab techs are screwing something down just out of frame. As they adjust some settings off screen, we see Bob Morton complaining about the body he's been brought. It still has an arm left. How crass! The techs agree to amputate it, and we shut down. Motherfucking Bob has found his volunteer. Apparently, when you join the cops, you sign a whole set of waivers and legal forms that cover exactly this kind of thing. And if you thought that was bad, try becoming an organ donor. Murphy just donated more organs than J.S. Bach after he packed it all in to become a techno DJ. The next montage of POV shots is the being formerly known as Murphy, showing us glimpses of the process Bob's team is using to turn him into something else. He's no longer a person. He is a product. He is turned off and on as time goes by around him, until he is unveiled to applause at OCP's boardroom. Murphy doesn't exist anymore. He has been Frankenstein into a cyborg. Part man, part robot, all cop. The film picks up with more media reports. Apparently the brand spanking new RoboCop is the darling of the media as he goes around old Detroit foiling criminals, stopping an attack on the mayor, meeting violence with even greater violence, and yes, shooting a rapist in the dick. All is good for OCP. This is the ideal, right? American ingenuity and know-how overcoming the problems of the old world through savvy application of innovation and entrepreneurship. But before you walk out of the theater chanting, USA, USA, we have a little problem. You see, there's a ghost in the machine. After an encounter with one of Boddicker's goons, Emil, RoboCop starts to remember things. You know, things. Like how he died. Fragments of his cuddly suburban life before that death. RoboCop starts to act strangely, perhaps even going rogue. He starts searching for police archives for records to prove that Boddicker and his gang aren't just responsible for Alex Murphy's murder, but that he and his gang are actually secretly employed by Dick Jones of OCP. Uh-oh, OCP can't have that, especially since they've been less than honest with the public about how RoboCop was made. They didn't tell the people that RoboCop was actually made out of people. It's people! So, OCP does what corporations do. First they spin, then they try to cover up, then they try to deflect and distract. The old 1, 2, 3 of crime, murder, and lies. Jones starts by hiring Boddicker to kill his old company rival Bob Morton. And right when Bob was in the middle of snorting coke off a model's tit starring a three-way. In a classic moment for the agers, Boddicker shows us once and for all the proper manner in which to inform ladies of the night that they should depart from the room forthwith. Now that's good, clean, wholesome entertainment. Why wouldn't you want the whole family to see this film? After that, Dick, being a dick, decides to tie up the rest of those loose ends and blame the whole mess on the now very dead Bob. But RoboCop has his own plans. Taking a direct approach, he walks into the drug factory full of drugs and people making drugs. You know, the drug place on 7th. Boddicker is having a meet and greet and kills almost everybody in the room. He extracts a confession from Boddicker through the classic subtle technique of beating the ever-loving dog piss out of him. Then Robo uses that confession to try to arrest Dick Jones. Jones confesses to all of it, but he's not exactly worried because OCP has installed software that prevents him from arresting any of their executives. More of that damn small print. Womp womp. What's more, RoboCop finds out that because he's gone rogue in pursuing all this, he's now a wanted fugitive. And there's a fuck ton of heavily armed cops between him and escape. Not to mention Dick Jones' own pet murder robot skulking in the parking garage. Looks like it's curtains for RoboCop. Only one problem. OCP built RoboCop better than they realized. He gets shot to hell, but he doesn't die as easy as before. Just as Ed 209 is about to send Robo to cyber heaven, he's rescued by the last thing that you'd expect. Stairs. And his old partner Lewis, who went rogue herself when she realized that it was Murphy inside that tin can. Well, yeah, that's been at least. And she could be next.
Oh man, this almost sounds like an instance where the product actually matches the marketing material for once.
Right? Yeah, he should have cut some corners, right? Like they did with Ed 209. Yeah, so the last half of the film is the revenge of RoboCop, as he very graphically hunts down and kills the ever-living fuck out of Boddicker and his goons using guns, high explosive, toxic waste, and finally bids sayonara to Boddicker himself with a spike through the fucking head. Speaking of toxic waste, Emil's death is one of the most cursed yet darkly funny scenes in all of cinema. You have to see it. Or maybe actually you don't. The point is, it's all very, 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 very graphically hyper-violent in the best possible way. And the special effects still hold up. Did I mention toxic ammo? Mwah, shit. Chef's kiss. In the end, there is a showdown between RoboCop and Dick Jones in the boardroom of OCP. Robo's unable to arrest Jones, but he plays the recording of Jones' own confession before the board, meaning there's no way OCP can spin it. So OCP's CEO does the legally advisable thing when confronted with an employee who's become a liability. He fires his ass. This releases Robo to kill Dick with what else? Graphic ultra-violence. As RoboCop walks out, the CEO of OCP, for some reason, asks him his name. Robo replies, Murphy, thus rejecting his identity as a product, reasserting his individuality, and reclaiming his humanity. Cool, right? I think what we should take away from this film is that RoboCop is like all good Frankenstein stories. When man tries to play God, our creations are inevitably flawed in that they were created by flawed men and not by a flawless God. Wait, too biblical? Okay, let's try this. It's that the human spirit is indomitable in the face of capitalistic greed. And the proletariat will inevitably rise up to cast off the shackles its oppressors. No? Not buying it? How about this? RoboCop is American Jesus in that he is both a product and a cop who died for our sins so he could be resurrected and return to shoot sinners in the dick. Yeah, maybe that one was too biblical. Maybe it's just that cyborgs going around with big guns killing bad guys is cool. Maybe it's none of these, maybe it's all of them, but one thing that you can definitely walk away from RoboCop knowing is that when the chips are down, when crime is up, when there seems to be no hope at all left in this godforsaken slag heap of a city, sometimes you absolutely have to just shoot that one guy in the dick. If you haven't seen it, you should. And if you need a copy, you can pick one up on eBay. You'll find that you can probably buy that for, I don't know, a particular singular quantity of money. This has been another CINEMANIA Field Report. This episode was written and performed by Zacharia Berks, Ethan Ireland, Andy Slack, and Hope Bravo. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. CINEMANIA Field Reports is a product of the CINEMANIA Society podcast, which is available wherever you might find quality podcasts.
I'll buy that for $1.